On a daily basis, the effects of our actions are imperceptible. Cumulatively though, their consequences are enormous. Our long-term position improves as a consequence of almost unnoticeable daily actions. And that is a quote from Warren Buffett, one of the absolute GOATs. And I think if people in tech sales reps could really understand that and apply that within their work, it would have the biggest outsized return for them. And everyone today in the sales space is obsessed with talking about cold calling frameworks, cold email frameworks, objection handling frameworks, and everything else under the sun. But all those things are absolutely pointless if you can't figure out and understand how to apply this one thing. So in today's video, I'm going to break down what that is, why everyone keeps making the same mistake, how you can avoid making it, and how you can turn hitting target, hitting your quota into an actual systemized approach, as opposed to just, spraying and praying as much activity as you can and hoping through brute force you're going to get there at the end of the month. And this is not just a video where you just watch it and disregard it. At the end of the video, I'm going to give you the exact document of how you apply this into your life and improve your performance immediately. And if you're watching this and you're like, well, look, I really want to become the top performing rep in my team, well, then what you need to do, you need to go and hit the subscribe button, because there is so much more tech sales education content coming up here now that I am going to turn every single person that subscribes to this channel into an absolute fucking operator. So first of all, I want to paint a picture of something I know every single person that watching this that is in sales has experienced, because I know I have a 100% experienced it. You come in, say for example on a Monday, you have a target of 100 dials a day, and you hit your 100 dials a day, no meetings booked. You hit 100 dials a day on the Tuesday, no meetings booked. You hit 100 dials a day on the Wednesday, no meetings booked. And what happens then? The head drops. The thoughts start to come into your head of, I'm not good enough, I'm not a good salesperson, am I ever going to book a meeting again? This week is absolutely done for, this month is done for, this quarter is done for. And these thoughts just spiral into then you coming into, say for example on a Thursday and the Friday and doing half the amount of the activity, because the pity train has arrived at the station and you're feeling sorry for yourself and you're like, I'm not even going to bother doing the work. And what that happens, that spirals into a bad week, which spirals into a bad month, which results in you not hitting target, should I say. It is a tale as old as time. And it is so frustrating to see so many people be impacted in their performance purely because what's between their ears. This is the single biggest killer in SDRs, missing target. And the thing is, it is so avoidable. But the unfortunate thing is, basically no one is shown how do you avoid that, and how do you prevent those negative thoughts actually creeping in and actually having a systemized approach to how you're operating every day. Now, objectively, what you're doing here is absolutely, completely and utterly irrational. You have let literally 3 isolated days spiral into you having a bad month. And you understand that. You can look back at the end of the month and say, why did I let just 3 bad days impact me? But that's the human in us. And unfortunately, not enough people are shown how you can actually avoid this. But the thing is, which you're going to be absolutely delighted to hear, it is very easy to fix. And it's very simple to implement it into your workflows and into your operations, so you can actually fix it today, and it's not going to take like 6 months to fix this or anything like that. But to start to fix it, you need to understand 2 key things. And the first is simply the difference between a leading indicator and a lagging indicator. And guys, this is not just relevant to sales, this is relevant to all areas of your life, and you should be applying it in all areas of your life too. A leading indicator is the actions you take to get the result, and a lagging indicator is the actual result itself. But here's the unfortunate thing about that, is that lagging indicators can't be controlled. All you can do is control the leading indicators. So let's just use the gym here as an example. If we have a goal of wanting to drop 10 kilos, in the immediate term, if I decide I want to drop 10 kilos, there's nothing I can actually do about that. I can't just say, okay, I'm dropping 10 kilos and that's it. All I can control is the leading indicators. Things like going to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, being in a calorie deficit, like tracking my food, sleeping well, etc., getting my 10k steps in, whatever it is. And only cumulatively then, if I am doing them over a period of time, the lagging indicator of dropping 10 kilos actually just takes care of itself. But if you just focus on the lagging indicator and stand up on the scales every day, looking down at the number thinking, oh, it's not where I want to be, you're going to drive yourself insane. And it is the exact Same in sales when it comes to hitting your quota consistently. So you're probably already starting to think about this from a sales standpoint. So let's actually just illustrate that. Let's say you're an SDR and your quota is that you need to book 15 qualified meetings per month. That is your lagging indicator. But what is your leading indicator to that? And like pause the video and just like literally write down like what would be my leading indicators in that? You're probably already thinking what they are. And it's pretty obvious. It's the amount of dials you do, it's the amount of emails you do, it's the amount of LinkedIn messages you do, it's the amount of companies you reach out to, it's the amount of leads within those companies. All these are leading indicators that are within our control. There is no way for us to control our lagging indicator, that 15 meetings per month. All we can control is the leading indicators that hopefully, as we're talking about our calls or emails and everything else that comes with that, if we stack them up over a long enough time horizon, say that's a month or a quarter or whatever you're targeting on, that is going to result in us getting to our lagging indicator. And it is completely counterproductive for us to be fixated on this lagging indicator number because there's nothing we can ultimately do to control it. All we control is our leading indicators. And I understand why people want to obsess over that big, shiny, lagging indicator number, because what we get paid on, like that's what salespeople care about. Like, why would it be in sales? Because we want to make a lot of money. I understand that, but it is completely counterproductive for us to actually be just being fixated on this big number at the top. What we need to be obsessed about is our leading indicator. So now we understand what leading and lagging indicators are, which is great. But you may be watching this thing as like, okay, right, Owen, okay, I'm going to obsess over my inputs as opposed to my output being the lagging indicator. But how do I actually apply that? Like, how do I go in every day just saying, okay, I'm going to obsess over these numbers, but what do I obsess over? Well, that is what brings us on to our second point, which is the law of averages. The law of averages states that through enough attempts, outcomes will revert back to the mean. And the simplest example to illustrate this is simply flipping a coin. You know, if you flip a coin 10 times, we could get completely outsized returns. You could get 9 heads and only 1 tails. But through consistently doing it 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, etc., we are eventually going to revert back to the mean of roughly 50%. And that is simply just maths. And it is the same in sales, but we like to call it sales math. So how do we actually apply the law of averages to our target of 15 meetings per month that helps us and allows us then to not spiral after maybe 1, 2, or 3 bad days? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Is that we need to figure out how many coin tosses, how many leading indicating activities are called emails, LinkedIn outreaches, etc. do we need to do to get back to our 50% average, our mean, or in this case, our 15 meetings per month. And then what we want to do is reverse engineer that back to daily KPIs. And then when we have our daily KPIs, it is really just all about ruthless execution on a daily basis. And the law of averages will take care of itself, and we will get back to our target of 15 meetings per month. And you know, you may be watching this Owen saying, okay, grand, you're saying about law of averages, you're saying this is going to be the best thing since sliced bread for me to implement into my workflow and how I'm operating on a daily basis, but how do I actually work out my law of averages? Well, my friend, let's figure it out. So the next section of this video can be 100% interactive for all you guys watching at home. You can follow along with me here and you can actually just work out your law of averages, and you can literally, by the end of this video, have your law of averages worked out and then go and start to implement them. But to actually be able to work out our law of averages, there are certain figures that we're going to need to be able to go and get, and we can extract all these figures from our CRM. And if you're unsure, you're maybe a bit of a novice on running reports to find figures and different things like that on your CRM, and whether you're using Salesforce, HubSpot, or whatever it is you're using in-house, then what I would suggest doing is going and talking to your manager, saying these are the figures you want to work out, or going to a top performer on your team who knows how to run reports and saying that, like, oh, here, these are the figures I want to work out because I want to work out my law of averages. But here are the numbers you're going to need to get. So number 1 is your dial to connect ratio. Out of every call you make, what percentage of the time does someone actually answer the phone to you? Number 2 is your connect to conversation ratio. When someone answers the phone, what percentage of the time do you actually have a conversation longer than 30 seconds? The reason I separate out connect and conversation percentages is because, you know, if you ring someone up and they just answer the phone and then pretty much immediately hang up like 5 seconds later, like that's not really a conversation, and it's no reflection on your ability as a salesperson, because it did not matter who was on the other end of that line for them. They were just going to hang up regardless. So I don't want that skewing your conversion percentages and giving you, I suppose, an unfair representation. Number 3 is your conversation to meeting ratio. Out of every conversation over 30 seconds you have, what percentage of those convert into a meeting booked? Number 4 is your meeting to opportunity ratio. Out of every meeting you book for your account executive, what percentage come back as a fully qualified opportunity? What most companies like to call a stage 2, an SQL, a sales qualified lead, or an SQO, a sales qualified opportunity. So you've went and you've got those figures now, which is absolutely brilliant. It's now time to actually apply them in finding your law of averages. So I'm going to walk you through an example of how you do that. A bit like I'm on a cooking show here or something. I'm literally like, here's one I prepared at home. Okay, so here we have our document that is going to be in the description where you can go and work this out. And first of all, what we're going to have is that we have obviously our opportunities target that we've been talking about the whole way through the video of 15 opportunities per month. And then we talked about the percentages that we're going to need to go and get from our CRM. So these are just example ones that I went and took. So let's say, for example, our dial to call connect ratio across the last 3 to 6 months has been 10%. So on average, every time we hit dial, 1 in 10 times someone answers on the other end. And let's say then about 50% of the time when we actually get in contact with someone, that actually converts into a conversation over 30 seconds. And then let's say on average 25% of the time, once we have a conversation over 30 seconds, we end up booking a meeting. So 1 in every 4 times we have a conversation over 30 seconds, we book a meeting. And then our meeting to opportunity ratio is 75%. So 75% of the time we book a meeting for our account executive, that results then in us getting a sales qualified lead, a sales qualified opportunity, or a stage 2, or whatever you call it internally. Essentially, you know, the account executive has said that's a good meeting. And the big thing is here, like, you know, a caveat to everything that's going on here around law of averages, you want to make sure this figure is as high as possible, because what that means is you are putting through really high quality pipeline. Your account executive is going to love you, your manager is going to love you, and as well as that, it's actually showing that you know how to generate really good quality stuff. So how do we then reverse engineer this back to daily KPIs and work out our law of averages? Well, what we're going to start with is our opportunities target of 15 opportunities, stage 2s, whatever you want to call them, we need to generate per month. But obviously, as we said here, in terms of 75%, not every single meeting we book is going to convert into a stage 2 or a sales qualified lead. So let's say in our case, across the last 3 to 6 months, or, you know, even looking on the averages of your team, it's been about 75%. So what that actually means is that we need to book 20 meetings per month. Because if we book 20 meetings per month, 75% of those convert into a sales qualified lead. That's going to get us to our target of 15 meetings per month. And then what we need to understand is, what is our conversation to meeting ratio? So if we need to book 20 meetings, how many conversations over 30 seconds roughly do we need to have across a month to get to our meeting target of 20, which will get us back to our opportunities target of 15? Well, if our conversation to meeting ratio is 25%, then roughly we need to have 80 conversations across the month. And then if we have 80 conversations at a 25% conversion rate, that's going to get us back to our 20 meetings booked, which gets us back to our 15 meetings target. You're going to see where I'm going here with this. So then we need to understand, okay, this is conversations. So this is over 30 seconds. So how many actual just connects? How many times does someone need to answer the phone to me across a month based on a 50% connect conversation ratio? Do we need to how many times do they need to answer the phone? So that means that we need to actually have 160 call connects. Because if we have 160 call connects, that'll mean on an average of 50% to a 30% second conversation, that's going to result in us having our 80 conversations that we need. And then reverse back at one more layer, that if we have a dial to call connect ratio of 10%, so across the last 3 to 6 months, if we have literally just picked up the phone and pressed dial, 1 in 10 times someone answers the phone on the other end of the line. So that's going to mean that across the whole month, we're going to need to do roughly 1,600 dials. And then what we can do with that figure is reverse engineer it back to daily KPIs. But just to do a full reverse engineer back up on the 1,600 number, so our dial to connect ratio on average across the last 3 to 6 months has been 10%. So if we do 1,600 dials at a 10% dial to connect ratio, that's going to result in us having someone answering the phone 160 times. If 50% of the time we have an over 30-second conversation with these people, that's going to result in us having 80 conversations. And if 25% of the time, that results in us actually booking a meeting. So 1 in 4 times we actually book a meeting after a conversation over 30 seconds. That's going to result in us booking 20 meetings at a 75% conversion rate to opportunity, is going to get us back to our target of 15 opportunities, or sales qualified lead, or stage 2s, or whatever you want to call them. And then we can reverse that back to a weekly, and then of course a daily basis. And what we can see down the bottom here is this reverses back roughly to 80 dials. So if we do 80 dials a day across the whole month, and I have done this, on a 5-day week, just if obviously you're clear on that, that's a 5-day week. You're obviously not going to be calling on Saturdays and Sundays. If we just do 80 dials a day, every single day across the month, every working day of the month, that should roughly get us back to our target of 15 opportunities. And when I did this exercise, it changed something completely for me as an SDR, because I went from being so fixated every single day on, have I got closer to 15 meetings? Have I got closer to 15 meetings? To, have I just hit my law of averages number? If I've hit my 80 dials per day, then today has been a successful day, and I can walk away knowing I have got closer to my target of 15 meetings per month. And I want to illustrate this in terms of how you're going to see this actually show up when you understand these numbers. First of all, you're going to have person A. And person A is the person who you have been up to this point, just so fixated on this 15 meetings per month. And at the end of the day, they do their 80 dials. Maybe they've had a 10% connect rate, had 8 conversations, but they've booked 0 meetings. And they do that for 2-3 days, and all they feel is, I'm not good enough, this is a waste of time. And it results in them coming in the following couple of days and just halving the amount of effort they're doing. And they're just going away from work every day feeling negative about it. Versus you have person B, who understands their law of average. And they have done 80 dials a day, they've had 8 conversations, grand they've booked 0 meetings, but they have hit their law of average, and they understand that regardless if I book 0 meetings today, or 0 meetings tomorrow, or 0 meetings the day after, eventually things are going to turn, because the data says so. Based on the last 3 to 6 months of data, if I do 80 dials a day across the month, it is going to result in me getting back to my target. And I want to give you a real example to actually illustrate this. When I was an SDR in Salesforce, one of the months when I was in there, we ran a competition. And basically it was in the first 2 weeks of the month, who could generate the most stage 2s or sales qualified meetings. And at the end of the 2 weeks, whoever won flew out, got brought to an event, hotel, everything like that. Pretty cool. And in the first week of that event, I am not joking, I had probably one of my worst weeks ever as an SDR. The phone was stone cold. I was booking nothing. And I went through that whole week, I maybe booked 1 meeting or something like that. But I was attaining my law of averages every single day, because look, at the end of the month, I still needed to hit my target, and I understood what my law of averages was. But what happened then was, again, I came in Monday, I hit my law of averages number, nothing happened. But what was stuck in my head is I'm not going to win the competition to go to Salesforce World Tour is what it was. I'm still going to have to attain my number because I still want to hit my target at the end of the month. And then what happened? The law of averages kicked in. I was paid my dividends for consistently putting in my work and hitting my law of averages. I believe it was actually, the Tuesday, the Wednesday, where I could not pick up the phone without booking a meeting. I think over a 2-day period, I booked close to 20 meetings and ended up winning the event. And I don't believe in terms of, there was nothing I fundamentally changed on that Tuesday and Wednesday that made me better. It was just I was continuously attaining my law of averages, and eventually, like a slot machine, it was going to have to pay out eventually. And an important caveat to this is that the law of averages, of course, isn't an exact science. I'm not saying that you're going to work this out on the doc in the description and it's going to reverse engineer back to your figure. Let's say it's 70 dials a day it worked out to, and you're just going to do that and you're 100% going to get your number. But what you do want to do to give yourself the best chance of it is have an insurance policy. And that insurance policy is adding a buffer. So let me show you how you can add a buffer as essentially an insurance policy to increase the likelihood of you hitting your target. And what it is we want to create is what we will call a stretch target, which basically is just adding the amount you are going to be doing. So take, for example, we have our opportunities target of 15 opportunities we need to hit to actually attain our quota. But what we need to move from then is thinking that 15 is our target. And we need to think that, say, for example, 120 or 125% is actually the target goal we want to hit. And we want to operate from that standpoint that our target is 125% of that number. So let's say, for example, the 15 opportunities. If we were to put a 25% buffer on that, it would mean that we would actually need to generate about 19 opportunities per month, which would equate back to 25 meetings per month, which would equate back to 100 conversations, which would equate back to 200 call connects, which would equate back to 2,000 dials per month. So it's essentially just adding a 20, maybe 15 to 30% buffer on top of everything. And in the doc, in the description, I show you exactly how you can add this buffer or this insurance policy to you hitting target. And it is essentially what you want to create is a stretch target, which is basically a percentage on top of what your target is. So let's say our target is 15 opportunities per month. If we operate day to day from a place of we're trying to hit 19 opportunities per month, which is 25% higher than our 15, then there is a very high likelihood that if we're aiming for 19, we're 100% going to hit 15. So if we were trying to hit 19 opportunities per month, that would actually be reverse engineering back using the same KPIs and percentages to 2,000 dials per month and roughly 100 dials per day as opposed to our 80 dials a day. So again, our 80 dials a day doesn't guarantee us hitting our target, but based on our law of averages, then if we hit 100, an extra 25%, it's going to be a very high likelihood that we are going to get back to our opportunities target of 15, if not hopefully then 19. And one more thing is that obviously what I have gone through there in that doc is basically 100% focused on cold calling. But you may be generating your pipeline from various different sources, whether that's cold email, LinkedIn outreach, Instagram DM outreach, whatever it is you're doing. And you can 100% use this exact same framework for those metrics. And I'll flash up on screen here the kind of things you should be looking at in terms of the percentage conversion rates on each of those channels to work out your law of averages. And then what you can do is you can put a weighting depending on the amount of your pipeline you currently generate based off each of the channels. Obviously, if you have 15 opportunities per month and currently you generate 80% of that through cold calling, obviously you should put an 80% weighting on the amount of cold calling you're doing and working out your law of averages. Or if it's, say, for example, 80% you generate through LinkedIn, obviously you should be putting an 80% weighting or so on the LinkedIn and working out the law of averages there. And if you're watching this and you'd like me to do a full breakdown of how you weigh it across every single channel, let me know in the comments and I can 100% do a part 2. So let's wrap this up here now and bring this all together. Stop focusing on your lagging indicators. They are not within our control. All we can do is ruthlessly execute on our leading indicators every single day. Figure out your law of averages, reverse engineer the daily KPIs, hit them every single day, and then trust the process. And guys, as I said earlier in this video, this does not just apply to sales. You can apply this into literally every avenue of your life to become a better person. Because then with this understanding, at the end of every day, when you're maybe asking yourself, geez, has today actually been a success? What can I define success as? You can look at your numbers and say, you know what? I've hit my law of averages today. That's good enough for me. And you can walk away detached from the outcome, ready to go into the next day. Conversely, if you haven't hit your law of averages, then you just need to book up your IDs and actually cop on and do some work. Because when you operate like this, bad days don't turn into bad weeks and bad weeks don't turn into bad months. You build a system that you can genuinely operate from every day to retain your target as opposed to relying on willpower, because systems beat willpower every single day of the week. As I said, in the description below, you can find the exact document you can take, implement to find your law of averages. And if you do it, which please go do it, because I guarantee it's going to help you so much, let me know how you get on with it. And if you're struggling to implement it, let me know as well, as I'll be more than happy to help. Also, if you found this valuable, of course, hit the subscribe button, as there is so much more tech sales content coming. And if there's anything in particular you want to see, drop that in the comments below. Until the next time, have a good one.